There we were, an unready father for an unwanted child. The boys gave him a name that very night. In retrospect, perhaps not the most fortunate, but nevertheless, a name we all came to use. We called him Hellboy.
Hey, yo, friends, what's going on? Welcome back to another insane episode of In Madness Pod. Oh, episode 40 officially. Congratulations, sir. Shawn the Butcher here with Vertebrae33. How the hell's it going?
Congratulations. The podcast has made the big 40, but not really, because we've actually been 40 for a while already, right? I don't know what the actual...
This might actually be 100 in realistic times.
Let's bring it up while you're introducing the episode. I'm always curious of what our actual episode count is.
You psychopaths voted for this movie. So these next two episodes go out to the In Madness family. I left it up to Vertebrae to pick the next movie since I forced him to go through Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But again, the In Madness family voted for that one. So I gave it all to Vertebrae. He came up with 3. He couldn't decide the next movie. This is our next movie. He left it up to you. You voted. And now we're doing another back-to-back superhero movies, which is very cool, I think.
Yeah.
We already know what our next movie is going to be, so no one's picking our next movie. We got that one.
And maybe we'll tell people. Maybe we should tell people so they can do their homework.
We'll tease it later.
Advance.
We'll tease it for the 25.
Shawn, this is our 99th episode.
So the next one is 100.
So the next one is our actual 100. But if you're just tuning in or you've been listening for a while, you know, we have this ridiculous numbering system with 0.5s and 0.75s. And we break episodes in half. So episode 39 is, you know, really 39 part 1, 39.2, you know, part 2. So we're actually right now on Apple, we have 98 episodes. And we will head into this being 99. And then our 100th episode will actually be a 0.5. So maybe we need to celebrate, right?
It'll be part 2 of this.
Part 2. So we'll celebrate in part 2 of this. You see how confused we are? We don't even know our own numbering system. Somebody help us out. Somebody write in and give us the actual episode.
That's why this is the premier podcast on the socials at In Madness Pod, inmadnesspod@gmail.com. Check us out on YouTube right now. You could like, subscribe, comment, leave the 5-star reviews. We have the In Madness Spotify playlist, which grows with every single episode. Happy In Madness Monday. If that's when you're listening, we drop a new episode every week. Tell everyone you know about this show. Spread the madness worldwide. And if you want to represent for you boys, you can rock a t-shirt. Get it at inmadness.com. Vertebrae, 2 questions for you quickly. First, what mug do you have?
So for this episode, I have a Hellboy mug.
Sick. Check that out.
Turn it around and see him on the other side. Oh, cool. I'm going the wrong way. There we go. And I have a Hellboy t-shirt on too. You can't really see it on the camera, but when we can show all this stuff online on the socials if you're listening to the podcast or you don't want to see our beautiful faces on YouTube. But we do recommend watching on YouTube as well, because we do show this stuff. You can see the gnarly pizza I had from the
Vertebrae's got props.
Episode. Way back when, there's a tinfoil hat on the signs episode. I think there's Terminator glasses. Yeah, Shawn shows toys. So I would definitely go back. I have this score on vinyl, Shawn. So
sick.
I have the score for 2004's Hellboy.
Yeah, that was my first question. I was like, what Hellboy are we doing?
You're the only one that matters. Yeah. The only one that matters. And I love Hellboy. This is, for me, it's Batman, Swamp Thing, Hellboy. These are the big 3.
Wow.
And these are huge for me. I have a massive collection of Hellboy comics and hardcover versions of stuff. So in the background over my shoulder now, I've been putting books up, if you noticed on YouTube. So I have volume 1 of the library edition of Hellboy and the vinyl behind me as well. So this was gigantic for me, and I was so happy that people picked it, because I feel like Hellboy cinematically has taken a hit So they do these 2 movies, and I have the poster for the second one next to me. So I think eventually we'll probably have to do that one too, the Golden Army with Guillermo. And they're supposed to do a third, and the third never materializes. And then this character goes into a bunch of really cool animated films. Hellboy has some very cool animated films, which I have on DVD. We can post pictures of that as well. I'm just giving myself so much homework, Shawn, because I have all these pictures to send you now. But then they come out with this David Harbour version. There's rumors that they're going to do a TV series, and they come out with the guy from Stranger Things who everybody likes at the time when Stranger Things is coming out. And it's just not for me at all. Not even close to being for me. And then I think Mike Mignola, the creator of Hellboy, kind of pulls back from that a little bit. And then he gets involved in another film that just came out last year that unfortunately heads right to streaming, which is never a good sign for films. I have heard it's good, and there are lots of things that are directly from the comics, right? Because this is Guillermo del Toro and Mike Mignola kind of famously butt heads a little bit as they go through these films, because one is, Mignola's baby, and Guillermo clearly has his vision and puts his stamp on it, and he also needs it to appeal to the masses. But I haven't seen the newest one, The Crooked Man, which is based off a Hellboy story that was famously illustrated by Richard Corbin. So I want to get into it, but it's right now, Shawn, it's in that great spot where you have to pay to either stream it or watch it. It's not on any streaming services at all. So that'll be a little bit of a wait, but I don't have high hopes. I have a little bit of Modern Crow feel when I look at that trailer. Before I go through all this, though, what is your connection to Hellboy? Do you have a connection?
No, I love that this is your Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles right here. Like, for what that was for me, this is for you. I had zero connection to Hellboy, did not know Hellboy was a thing. This came out early 2000, which I think was right around the time all the Marvel movies were popping off, really like the early era of that. Maybe I'm wrong, but like I know the superhero thing was big. And when Hellboy came out, I'm like, who the hell's Hellboy? I don't know anything about this dude. There's the famous story I tell you where I went to the movies, I saw this, and I walked out in the middle of the movie. Now that I have fully reviewed this movie line for line, I know the exact part I feel like where I walked out, but it was more of like a get back thing for my young, stupid teenage dirtbag friends than it was for me actually walking out of the movie. But no, I don't. This is fully like a Vertebrae in love episode, which is what I wanted because I had mine with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I'm stoked to see your enthusiasm for our Hellboy episode. My enthusiasm is not as anywhere near as high
here we go.
as yours.
Here we go. This is a quintessential In Madness film. It is chock full of gnarly bits. Dense, gnarly bits. And in the beginning, unfortunately or fortunately, you're going to have to hear me blab on a bunch of these gnarly bits. But I think this wrongfully gets categorized as a superhero film. Iron Man comes out in 2008, so I think this is pre the Marvel-y stuff, but they've been kicking around with Blade,
like the Spider-Man
movies
and stuff. I mean, though, those were like early 2000s, I think.
But
right?
This gets lumped in with that. But Hellboy's not a superhero. Right? He's an occult, crime fighter. If anything, he's very much more Batman. But yeah, this will be a new one coming off of. I hope this is not a complete flip flop. So I hope when I talk about touching parts of this film, you're not laughing like when I was laughing on Turtles. But maybe this character Shawn first appears in 1993. Mike Mignola creates it. It's a drawing that he does for Dime Press #4. So it's just like a pinup that he does. And then San Diego Comic-Con puts out a comic in August 93 called San Diego Comic-Con Comics #2, and Hellboy's in there. But then finally in March of 94, we get Hellboy Seed of Destruction, which is what this film is loosely based on. So it's released, and it's the first time it's in comic form. It's his role working alongside the BPRD with Abe Sapien and Liz. And we meet, the Professor Broom. And so the movie is kind of based off of that. and the character origin is a little bit different for the movie. So Hellboy, or somebody posted it on our socials, Anung Un Rama. I don't know if I get it right. That's his actual real name. So in the comics, he's conceived in October 5th, 1574, to a human woman who's on her deathbed, and she was a witch who gained powers because she was consorting with a demon. And so that's where this demon is Hellboy's biological father. They start to play with this a little bit in the film. It's a little bit different, but this movie is steeped in Lovecraft influences. It's all over the place. This is one of the first times that these Lovecraftian monsters are seen on film looking much like that. We've had a lot of films prior to this where it's more of the headpiece of Lovecraft, the mental terror, and not a lot of manifestations of actual creatures. But this is a lot of tentacly and multi-eyed creatures that is, some of them come almost right out of descriptions from Lovecraft stories. So there's an incredible documentary about Mignola called Mike Mignola Drawing Monsters. So I said before, but for me, the three artists, and there's a ton that have influenced me, but in my life, the three artists that have most influenced my own work, or who I've aspired to be, were Mignola, Wrightson, and Pusshead. And you roll all those three together, and you can kind of see some of aspects of that in my work. But that's, and Salvador Dali and other people obviously come along, and I'm really into them. Drew Struzan plays a huge part, but my work doesn't necessarily look, carry forward with Drew Struzan. It's heavy on the black and white, the shadow work that Mignola does. This documentary is incredible. It comes out in 2022. It is on, we're going to link it. It is on Amazon Prime. You should definitely watch it, Shawn. You not only see him drawing and talking about his characters and his influences, it's just amazing. I did the Kickstarter for it, which got me, and I'm a sucker for this stuff, Shawn. So it got me like an exclusive t-shirt, and the disc came with a second disc with a bunch of extras on it. So it's literally, there's one segment where it's just him talking about his books and pulling books off the shelf and talking about all this stuff. So Hellboy is wrapped up in Lovecraft, old ghost, and monster stories. And Mignola says in the documentary, and has said in other interviews, the two books that changed his life are Dracula and Pinocchio. And anyone listening may be surprised by the Pinocchio, but the original Pinocchio story is really messed up and very strange. The Disney does their version. And years later, Mignola got to do a version of Pinocchio for Beehive Books, which I have, and we can show on the socials as well. And that was a really cool version where he illustrated along with it, and they brought in other people too. It's very, very well done. So you'll notice in all of his work, it's driven by ghost stories, Norse mythology. We start playing with mythology from other countries throughout it. And his three biggest art influences are Jack Kirby, Frank Frazetta, and Bernie Wrightson. So as a storyteller, if you're not influenced by Jack Kirby, then I'm not sure what you're doing. But that is kind of his basis for that. Guillermo del Toro, Shawn, where do you stand on Guillermo? I know you guys have a interesting relationship.
He did Pan's Labyrinth, right?
Yes.
I like Pan's Labyrinth. He did some other movies I know I've seen. He did
right. So he starts out with Kronos, The Devil's Backbone. In 2006 is Pan's Labyrinth. He does a really crazy movie called Mimic, which you should see. He does Blade 2, Hellboy 2. Then he goes into like Pacific Rim, Crimson Peak. Famously wins the Academy Award for The Shape of Water, a film that I absolutely, absolutely love. Nightmare Alley, which is a great movie, a little long and a little slow, kind of for modern audiences, but done very well. And some of these, like Pacific Rim, I think he's the producer of it. I don't know that. I'm not sure if he's the director. I should have looked that part up. But he also gets involved in TV, and he does the Cabinet of Curiosities. I know you saw Cabinet of Curiosities, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
all those like individual episodes. I remember liking parts of it. I have a weird relationship with Guillermo. I feel like because I feel like he's involved and he does things that you would think that I would love because they're all things that I do love: monsters, demons, practical effects, all this cool dark mythology. But like for some like Pacific Rim, I'm just like not into it. And like
Yeah.
and other
Yeah.
there's
Which was kaiju, which is interesting that you would be
Yes,
interested
yeah,
into it.
there's this and I'm very specific with, like, some of the things that I like. I like a couple of those things, and I love those things, and then other things outside of it, I'm not too knowledgeable about, or I just
Mhm.
don't give that much of a shit about. But, yeah, I have a strange relationship with him, I feel.
So a couple quick things on Guillermo. He has a massive collection of collectibles and movie props, and it's a whole like house on his property that's just full of all this stuff. They put out a book about it, which surprisingly I have, and we can post on the socials. So you're getting a theme in this episode already. But for me, many years ago, I'm doing New York Comic Con, and I'm not sure if I ever told you this story, but it's at the time when I'm doing the booth with Metal Sucks. And New York Comic Con's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Thursday used to be this sort of professional preview day type thing. It wasn't even open the full day. It was open at like 3 o'clock to 6 or 7 or something. And sales wise, nobody really made any money, right? Because it's just all the other professionals kind of wandering around. But it was cool to see different people that are going to appear at the con wander around. And I'm there with one of the guys from Metal Sucks, and I look over, and there's Guillermo. And he's like, you got it. And I'm selling my Cthulhu shirt at the time, which was one of my biggest hits and sold all over in Hot Topic for years, and on my site as well. And he's like, you got to go over and talk to him. So I'm like, okay. So I go over, and he has like a handler with him or an assistant or whatever, and a few people around him, not a ton. So I start talking to him, and I show him a card. I had a card with artwork on it, and he looks at it, and he's like, "Cool logo." He has like that, the awesome accent, and I'm like, "Thanks, I appreciate it." And then he's like, "Yeah, you should, email me and like get my email address from this guy. Maybe we could do something." So then I walk back over to the booth, and our buddy from Metal Sucks, and you can figure out which one it is by by the way he said this to me, is like, "What's wrong with you, you idiot? You didn't take a picture with him." And I'm like, "Yeah, I didn't." And he's like, "And you should take a picture and hold up the Cthulhu shirt." And I'm like, "Oh." So like I go over, and now I'm waiting. The group is there, and you feel like 12 years old. You're waiting to like meet this famous person, thinking like, when am I ever going to see him again in this environment? There's not hundreds of people around him. There's like 4. So I said to the guy, "Excuse me, is there any way we could take a picture?" And like, I have this shirt that I wanted to give to him. And Guillermo made a joke about, because I think it was like an extra large, and he was like, "It's beautiful art, but like I'm gonna have to lose a lot of weight to fit into the shirt." He's a big guy, so then he goes, "We'll take a picture," and I go to stand next to him, and now I've forgotten that we should have the shirt in our hands. And Guillermo's the one who goes, "Wait, let's hold up the T-shirt." So we hold up the Cthulhu shirt and get a picture. It's been on my socials for years, and I can repost it for this, of us holding the shirt, and I give it to him. So now that shirt lives in his house in that collection of all of his stuff. So somewhere is probably clothing. He has all these different sections of props and books and whatever. So I'd like to think he just didn't throw it away that night, that maybe it went back with him to his collection. I'll never know. And I never got any returns on any emails I sent. So I dutifully send emails like once a month for like 6 months. And if you know me at all, that's just kind of how I roll. Like, hey, I'm still here and whatever. And I was very excited about the idea. And you get these learning experiences when you're an artist, and you get it in the music business too, Shawn. When you're in certain settings, people say things, and then when you actually go to follow through on it, they're kind of nowhere to be found. In his defense, he's incredibly busy. But anyway, that's my Guillermo story. So I've already given you 17 posts to post on
You're gonna
the
have to
thing.
send me a whole lot of shit.
Oh God. And then the score is by Marco Beltrami, who we know and love for doing the Aliens versus Predator score. He did the 2011 Thing, which we probably, after we get to Thing, we probably have to get to that one. He did A Quiet Place. And he did another movie, which we will do, that you and I like a lot, that people don't talk about, Underwater.
Mm.
And he's done a ton of movies, The Quiet Place 1 and 2 and all kinds of stuff. But he's incredible at it. So I have that score on vinyl. And then the last thing before we go into the cast, and then we can sort of get in the movie, because I feel like I'm dragging this down already. But the movie poster is created by Drew Struzan. And it's an incredible movie poster. And famously, he creates Hellboy 2 poster. And I think we mentioned this in our missed episode, that ends up not getting used because that's when they're headed in the Photoshoppy way. So there is a really great video online. You could buy it as a DVD of Drew painting this poster. And if you are an art nerd like me or a budding artist, you watch it and literally watch him an hour or so of him drawing and painting and talking about it. So it's just like having a conversation. It was expensive when it came out, like $80 or something like that. And somebody got me a copy of it. But I could watch it every single day of the week. Just watching this guy create art is amazing. And I know you were wondering, Shawn. So yes, there is a novelization of this. So just like the Turtles, we get a comic that's made into a movie that's made into a novelization, and the novelization, from what I could tell, is just there. I don't think it's, there's nothing new. There's no extra insight. I think all the insight lives in the comics. And you want me to do the cast really quick?
Go ahead.
All right, so it's Ron Perlman as Hellboy, Selma Blair as Liz Sherman, Jeffrey Tambor, who does a great job, as Tom Manning, Carol Roden as Grigory Rasputin, Rupert Evans as the often hated John Myers, and we'll get into that character, maybe the one downside of the film for me. Brian Steele as Samael, Doug Jones, famously Doug Jones as Abe Sapien, who goes on to just be involved in characters like that and with Guillermo for years following this. And John Hurt as Professor Broom. There's a young version of John, of that character, played by Kevin Trainer as well. So tons of Hellboy influences. There's an Art of Hellboy book with sketches, storyboards, making of. We can get into that in part 2. There's also a documentary on the DVD for this, which we can get into in part 2. And I think, this way we can just jump right into the film. I'm going to probably stop you 700 times.
Vertebrae is glistening right now.
I'm glowing.
He is basking in this episode. He picked it. You backed him up on this pick, and now we will dive into Hellboy. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, we're in the coldest regions of space, the most monstrous entity. Ogdru Jahad, the 7 gods of chaos, slumber in their crystal prison, waiting to reclaim Earth and burn the heavens.
Mm-hmm. This is listed in De Vermis Mysterious, page 87, which is Mysteries of the Worm. It's a fictional grimoire, and a grimoire is a book of like spells or magic, created by Robert Bloch. And Robert Bloch was strongly influenced by the Cthulhu mythos and Lovecraft, and he wrote to him, and he kind of became a little bit of a protege of Lovecraft. And then Lovecraft encouraged him. So back in the day, Shawn, no texting, right? No instant availability. So Lovecraft famously writes a ton of letters. Some still hold up and good to read. Some he puts his personal beliefs on society and race relations, not so good to read now. But they all exist, and they've all been published. And so that's how you would reach out to him. Hey, I saw this author in this pulp. I want to write him a letter. You get his address from somebody. I don't even know how. And he writes him a letter. He encourages Bloch to continue to write. He starts doing his own cosmic horror and emulating it. And he creates this Mysteries of the Worm, this sort of fake book, like almost like the Necronomicon, which is what Lovecraft does. And so right away, Mignola and should we call him GDT? Should we be cool and call Guillermo? No, we'll call him Guillermo. We don't have to call him GDT. You call him whatever you want. Del Toro? What do you want? Nah, that sounds like Benicio. I don't know.
GDT is cool.
GDT is cool. All right. Well, we're that close to him. We'll call him GDT. And Lovecraft suggests that he writes to other members of the circle. So he writes to August Derleth and R.H. Barlow, Clark Ashton Smith, and others, and they kind of create this group of authors, much like when we had John Langdon on, and there were other groups of authors like Laird Barron and Paul Tremblay that they kind of huddle up together and become friends. But Shawn, that title of that book is also the name of the 6th album by High on Fire.
Oh shit.
So I think we have to include a High on Fire song on the In Madness Spotify playlist.
You can let me know which one.
Yeah. If you're watching on YouTube, you just saw Shawn's heart sink, because I can tell you now, and I knew before I said it, there are certain bands I know that Shawn's not a fan of. And when I was taking these notes, am I right?
They're great. I interviewed them once in Philadelphia. Great guys.
I'm sure they're great guys, but I don't think you're getting in your car and putting on High on Fire, right?
I mean, they got some riffs.
Okay. They got some. See, Shawn's being nice on this episode. I love it. He wants me to listen, bring the heat, Shawn. If you don't like this movie, I want to hear it. I want to hear the complaints.
Well, we could do it in part 2, definitely.
Okay.
So what makes a man a man? His origins are something harder to describe. In 1944, we had a classified mission off the coast of Scotland. Nazis combining science and black magic to take back control of the war. Our voiceover guy is 28 years old, a paranormal advisor to President Roosevelt. I never expected what would transpire that night would not only affect the course of history, but change my life forever. The camera comes through the clouds, the eye of the storm, down to an island. It's October 9th, 1944 in Scotland. A bunch of soldiers and a small squirrely man tells the leader of the troops the men will need these rosary beads. The dude laughs, takes out his gun and hands it to the little guy and says, "You're going to need one of these."
And this takes place 11 months before World War II ends. So this story is very much, hey, the Nazis are on the ropes and they're trying stuff, the best they can. Famously, the Nazis are involved in, and some of it's been embellished, but involved in searching for occult objects and trying to find ways to win the war by using magic. And I think Hollywood has embellished it a lot. There are some aspects of it that are based in reality, and we can get to that. But this is Trondheim Abbey, and it's the ruins of an ancient convent located on the coast of Scotland. And it was built on the intersection of ley lines. And I did not know what ley lines were, Shawn. Did you?
No.
Okay, so I had to look it up, and I couldn't even interpret it. I'm just going to read what it says, but it just says straight alignments drawn between various historic structures, prehistoric sites, and prominent landmarks. The idea was developed in the earliest 20th century Europe, with ley lines believers arguing that these alignments were recognized by ancient societies that deliberately erected structures along them. So members of this Earth's Mysteries movement say that these ley lines demarcate Earth's energies and serve as guides for alien spacecraft.
Sick.
And so it's just a different way of, and there's a lot of this based in fact. These structures, these religious temples or places do often end up in similar like lines or parallel with other structures. So whether it's an accident or not, I don't know, but I love that already we're just rolling all of this into this movie.
This little man hates violence. His name is Professor Broom, and the troops think he's nuts. Troops are mad because there's nothing on the island, but Professor assures them there are ruins here. The remains of, like you just said, Trondheim Abbey, the boundaries between our world and others. The troops think he's full of it. They find a massive, evil Nazi castle. We see our Nazi commander, the freak in the gas mask, Karl Rupert Cronin, Hitler's top assassin and head of the Thule Occult Society.
Yeah, and so Cronin is in the comics, but in the comics, he's not. They make him in this to be this like super villain with powers and everything, and we'll see what happens to him. In the comics, he's sort of just this Nazi SS scientist who wore a gas mask and he's disfigured in some way, and that's why he's wearing this thing over his face. So they definitely expanded this for the film. his portrayal of Cronin is very similar to Joseph Mengele, who, you know, is involved with the Nazis at Auschwitz and is famous for torturing people at the concentration camps. And he's an SS officer who, you know, is famously nicknamed the Angel of Death, which is what the Slayer's Angel of Death song is based on. It's based off of Mengele, and that's kind of where Mignola pulls this from. So we're getting a lot of actual history rolled in with occult stuff. What are we, 4 minutes in to the
Barely.
movie? Yeah, this took me forever as I kept having to stop this film and be like, wait, but what does that mean? So I guess this is the time to add Slayer's Angel of Death to the In Madness Spotify playlist.
Let's do it. It builds with every single episode. It's a lot of metal and hip hop, but there's a lot of other cool things in there as well. But yes, I'm adding all these amazing songs to the In Madness Spotify playlist. They open up this massive contraption with these spinning rings. A bald man approaches wearing a robe. A lady is holding his umbrella. He tells her, no matter what happens, this book will guide you back to me. She doesn't want him to leave. He grants her everlasting life, youth, and power to serve him. This is Ilsa and Grigori. Grigori's being yelled at by some general telling him he's been 5 years to get to this point. He better not fail. Grigori says he promised Hitler a miracle and he will deliver. They hook him up to this massive Thanos glove with wires in it to Grigori's arm.
Yeah, very cool. And it's also on it's on the right hand, very similar to what we're going to see with Hellboy as well. So we have that connection. Very cool with like the tubes and stuff on it. Very well done.
He says what he is about to do will never be undone. He will open a portal, awaken Ogdru Jihad, the 7 gods of chaos, and they'll destroy our enemies. And I'm like, yeah, but what's going to stop them from destroying you, jabroni?
Well, that always happens. But also, Shawn, 7 gods of chaos.
Here we go again.
With the number 7 and all of its religious connotations. We get it right here. This opening scene has a very, very much an Indiana Jones feel to it, right? This is the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark in a lot of ways. What did they think was going to happen when they opened the Ark of the Covenant? Everybody wants the ultimate power, but it never, what's stopping the ultimate power from destroying you as it goes along? Yeah, crazy.
Grigori says from the ashes a new Eden will arise as the camera zooms into the book Ilsa is holding. They turn on the glove. He does the old abracadabra, and the glove and the spinning rings open up a portal into space. We see a giant ship which also appears to have eyeballs. Professor Broom's like, the portal's open. This is bad. They must be stopped. So they toss a grenade and the shit hits the fan.
Yeah, so that's a big creature. That creature is rendered very similar with these stones and these 7 stones in the comics as well. So that's this tentacled, multi-layered, and we get into, in Lovecraft, we always get into like buildings that are of geometry that people don't really understand, and how can you conceive of it. So this is a visualization of that on screen, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, I thought it was a ship, but yes, but later on you do find out that it's like a real actual being, which is pretty cool. The scientist dude gets blown into the portal. He burns alive. All the troops and Nazis are shooting at each other. Things are exploding. Gas mask dudes killing a bunch of troops. He runs out of bullets and he pops out his blades, these gigantic knives that retract from his forearms like Wolverine. He's whooping ass.
Yeah, and so Shawn, when that Nazi goes into the portal, you hear a scream. That is the famous Wilhelm scream. So that is an iconic stock sound effect that originates in 1951 in this film called Distant Drums. And Ben Burtt, the famous sound designer for Star Wars, picks it up, and they end up using this in Star Wars, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Poltergeist, Batman Returns, over 400 films and TV shows. When you hear the Wilhelm scream, you will know it as soon as you hear it. It ends up in Gremlins, Lethal Weapon 4, Die Hard with a Vengeance. Almost all of the Indiana Jones films have it in it as well, and it's just a neat little thing. There was a rumor, or not a rumor, I think they said they might retire that scream. it's very cool. It does for me. It will pull me out of the moment a little bit when I hear it in films now, because it's like, okay, I know that it's this like we should
I have it.
dub it.
Ready?
Yeah, there it is.
Hang on. Ready?
There it is. That's the Wilhelm scream. You will hear that all. If you didn't know about it, you will hear that all over the place. Watch any movie through the through the 80s and 90s,
I'm done.
and then you'll hear it again. We should end the episode with that scream. But
Okay.
there it is.
I will try to remember. Okay, awesome. Professor Broom grabs a grenade and throws it at the portal. Gas mask goes to grab it, but gets blown away, and this enormous metal rod impales him. Grigori's glove malfunctions. As the portal closes, he gets sucked into it, as globules of his skin are coming off, getting sucked towards the tiny portal, which pulls him in and folds him in half backwards, like the dude in the Blob who gets pulled through the bookcase. Professor Broom says the portal was open for too long. Something may have come through. He turns around and sees Gas Mask has escaped. I call him Gas Mask. That's what he's going to be called.
Yeah, you could call him Gas Mask if you want. That's fine.
While tending to his wounds, Professor Broom tells the soldier there is a dark place where ancient evil slumbers and waits to return. Grigori showed it to us. Grigori is the occult advisor to the Romanovs. In 1916, at a dinner in his honor, he was poisoned, shot, stabbed, clubbed, castrated, and drowned. And yet, we saw him here tonight.
Yes, so that is Grigori Rasputin. So Rasputin is super famous, and he was initially, true story, poisoned with cyanide. Then he was stabbed and shot several times. They thought he was dead, so they bound him, wrap him in cloth, submerge him in the freezing waters of the Neva River, maybe.
What the fuck?
When his body is found, it seems like he actually struggled to free himself from his bonds, and there was water in his lungs. So he actually died from drowning, not from being poisoned, stabbed, shot, and submerged in this incredibly freezing water, which is enough to probably send people into shock and kill them. So yeah, Rasputin was a character, a person who got close with, kind of the imperial leaders in Russia, and they believed him. A lot of people believed him to be like this faith healer. So this adds to his, allure, I'll say. And Rasputin is all over the comic as well, and he shows up a bunch of times. It's almost like he's in a lot of ways Hellboy's father. But this is a character, so already in this film, what are we, I don't know, 8 minutes into this movie, we've gotten heavy Lovecraft, Nazi lore, we're rolling in Rasputin, and, it's December 29th, 1916 is when he's lured to this palace and killed, and now we see him 28 years later.
They hear a noise, they look around, and wouldn't you know it, a little baby devil creature has made it through the portal.
Bright red ape, right?
Yeah, little red ape. Cute little thing. He's got horns, his own little Thanos glove on his hand as well.
Yeah, the right hand of doom is known as.
Broom entices it with a baby Ruth. Now I'm hungry and I want a baby Ruth.
And actually, Shawn, this stops me in my tracks because I'm like, Baby Ruth. One, that Baby Ruth bar looked really big.
It looked
like
enormous.
long before the king size bars came out. And I'm like, oh, what is the timing on this? So Baby Ruth comes out in 1920 by the Curtis Candy Company. And they make this Baby Ruth bar, and it's the best-selling confection in the 5-cent category. So it was in the late 1920s. And it became a staple for the Chicago-based company for more than 6 decades. I like Baby Ruth. You?
Yo, I'm gonna go. I'm listening to this episode back. I'm buying one right now.
Yeah, we should have them for part 2. When we record part 2, we should both have Baby Ruth.
Baby
Not
Ruth.
eat them on camera because it's, you don't need to hear us chewing Baby Ruth. But this guy, Professor Broom, man, he carries a lot of Baby Ruths with him.
Well,
Like,
he
was
has
that
to
his?
after the was that in the beginning or in the middle? He's
Yeah, in the
got
beginning, he has 2, right? He uses one to lure him down, and then he has another one, but that's also, like, they're in good shape. He's just been thrown on the ground. He's soaking wet and disgusting, and he just has yeah, I'd love to think that he goes to pack on these trips, and he's got some ancient books with him with all this information and his journal, and then he right next to it, he lines up, like, 2 Baby Ruth bars. Like,
I like
he's
the way this man
spending money.
thinks. Always need a
Yeah.
sweet treat.
Absolutely. No matter what trouble you get into, maybe a Baby Ruth gets you out of it.
The little devil jumps into Broom's hands, his new baby boy. We hear our voiceover say, "We named him that very night." All the troops are taking a group picture. The narrator
Mhm.
says, "We called him Hellboy." The man taking the picture says, "Look at the birdie," and the camera flashes. And then we get our opening credits.
Yeah, and so this photo, there's an illustration in the comic that it's based on of like a version of that photo, which is really cool. So in the beginning, we're going to get a lot of shots throughout it that almost come from comic panels, and then as the movie goes on, because it differentiates so much from the comic, we get less and less of that, but all of this structure with all these sculptures behind it and everything, that is all so Mignola, right? His panels, his books are just full of all these cool little ancient sculptures or oddities, or just in every scene. So very, very cool.
Our opening credits have a bunch of news clippings about Hellboy, the government denying he exists. FBI made a deal with Devil Boy, half man, half devil. He came from the sky. One of the news clippings says he hunts monsters, and then we hear a voice saying the FBI has got themselves a monster hunter.
Mm.
There's all these newspapers, blurry Hellboy sightings like he's Bigfoot or the Loch Ness monster, and across the screen we get Hellboy.
Yeah, I think it's a very cool opening. We get the whole story. We get almost like he's Bigfoot. We get that like film, that footage, the black and white grainy footage of him. Very, very cool opening. What is there not to like so far, Sean?
So it's and I'm in at this point. I don't know where I was really out. It just I don't know. I'll get to it in part two.
Okay.
I don't want to
No,
step
no,
all
no.
over it
No,
now.
no. We should definitely.
Cut to the snowy mountaintops. Burgaw Pass, Moldavia, present day.
Right. So that's a high mountains pass in eastern Carpathian Mountains of Romania, and it's made famous by Bram Stoker's novel Dracula. And it was believed to be the gateway to the realm of Count Dracula.
People trekking through snow. What you seek is in there. One of them goes up to a wall, wipes off snow. There's carvings in a rock. They open a book with a symbol that matches the one on the rock. They enter a cave. We see an underground city. And here I put very Lovecraftian, as Vertebrae likes to say.
Absolutely. And also, like, I wouldn't want to be this guide. We're about to find out, but like, what a lousy job.
They enter a sacred place, this circle enclosure, large statues surrounding the structure. The man leading them says, "Give me my gold. We shouldn't be here." Piece of gold gets thrown next to him, and he sees a swastika on it. And from behind, a blade slices through his chest. It's Gas Mask's blade. It's him and Ilsa.
She got a new haircut. She looks different.
So, I say, for me, this, my friends, brings me to my milking of the alpacas moment.
Okay.
I thought this was very well done and very cool. So the dead man who just got sliced through the chest is on the floor, and his blood is flowing through this like winding maze carved into the floor.
Right, like it's a big circular maze.
And his blood is flowing towards the center, and out of the blood, covered in blood, a man rises like Uncle Frank in the attic in Hellraiser. And this man covered in blood, Ilsa and Gas Mask approach him, and she says, "Master," and it's Grigori.
Yes, Rasputin is back, Sean. Rasputin is back. The big bad.
Cut to doctors looking at a bunch of x-rays. Have you told them yet? No. We're at Lexington Oncology Center in New York. The doctors say, "We'll notify his family." He has no family to notify. We see an old man, looks like Doc Brown from Back to the Future. Got his rosaries hanging off his wrist. I'm guessing this is Professor Broom.
Yes. And Sean, this part, so they create this world, and I'm really, really into it. And this is where there are a few aspects of the film that kind of bum me out a little bit. One of them is this, because I think you just created this incredible world, and I want to know more about it. And now we're making this guy ill, right? He's not going to last that long because of this, presumably. And so as we get to meet them all and we get to meet the facility and everything, you see all this incredible stuff, and you want to know more about what led up to that. And certainly there are tons of comics, with the BPRD and everything involved with Hellboy, and you can learn it from that. But they paint this complete picture. We've just got some framework laid. We're about to get the rest of this picture fleshed out. And I want to hang out in this world, but now you're all giving me this sort of dramatic, abrupt turn. And I think movies, they have to do this stuff a lot because they don't know if they'd make another one, and they want to have the drama involved. But it sort of reminds me of those, every Batman movie where he must tell people who he is. We rush to things that take 400 issues in the comic. So this part I wasn't that crazy about.
Doc say, according to his file, he has a son. He leaves the office and hears a TV behind him. It's Tom Manning, the head of special ops for the FBI. This grumpy fucker is in studio going over the latest Hellboy sightings, staring at a blurry picture, reviewing his tail and the horns. Turns out Tom Manning, legendary Jeffrey Tambor, also from Arrested Development, great show.
Mm-hmm.
I had the honor of meeting this dude one time at work in a very cool way. We were in the middle of having a work meeting, and he just walked by and everyone lit up. So he just walked into the meeting and started shticking and just talking to everybody.
Wow.
And I was like, this is, and then just left because the meeting was in the next room. So he just left our room and went into the next room, and it was fucking iconic. And he took a picture. I got a picture with him. I'll try and find it and post it on the Ip Madness socials. Awesome.
That's
dude.
awesome. Yeah,
awesome,
very
dude.
cool.
He's on TV. He's very mad. In pictures of aliens, UFOs, Yeti, Hellboy. Why are they always out of focus? Good question. It's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
Old man Broom smiles at the TV. The man doing the interview asks, what about the Bureau of Paranormal Research and Defense? Tom Manning points at the camera and says, I will tell the world there is no such thing. Cut to the Bureau for Paranormal Research and Defense in Newark, New Jersey.
Awesome.
Kid pulls up on his little bike. Gated building says Waste Management Services.
Yeah, squeaky clean Waste Management Services was what it said on the side. Squeaky clean, yeah.
He pushes a button on the gate. Someone angrily answers. He says, John Myers, FBI, transfer from Quantico. Button pad flops down to show the space age security ID checker. The voice on the other end, I think, says, look at the birdie, and it flashes and scans his eyeball and opens the gate.
Right. So here, before we get into this world of the BPRD, here is the character that really divided and upset a lot of Hellboy fans when this movie comes out. This is an eagerly anticipated film by a lot of fans. Hellboy's a huge character before then. I will tell you now that Mrs. Vertebrae33 cannot stand the John Myers character, loves this movie, but cannot stand him for other reasons that we'll get into later. But he's meant to be in GDT, and we get to say his name like that because we're cool. I believe is putting him in there to be the everyman that invites us into this world. And there's probably a concern that when they put this movie out, if they just throw all of this Lovecraft, Rasputin, Nazis, occult, all of this at just the general public, not somebody like me or Shawn, but the general public go to see this on a Friday night. And they're like, what the hell is going on? So we've got the aptly vanilla named John Myers who shows up and takes us through this world. He's just, I'm not crazy about him at all. And I think he could have been not in this movie and or sacrificed very early on as our intro character to this world, and then we kind of, we don't need him anymore. There's other characters.
Be one of them jabroni agents when they go into the tunnel.
Yeah, it leads us down a path that will get you in a storyline and a narrative that takes place in the middle of the movie that I think takes away from this film. And I think when you get to the sequel, we kind of do that again with a different narrative. And by the way, John Myers just doesn't show up in the sequel because I think they realized that people were just not crazy about him. But that you kind of don't need. And I think this is the part where they're just too concerned with making sure this is a hit. It's costing a lot of money. This film has a lot of practical effects mixed with CG, a lot of very cool practical effects. It's expensive. And it's a character in 2004 that, unless you're somebody like me and in the comics world, don't really know about. So they're concerned that they're going to get there on a Friday night and people are going to sit down on date night and be like, what the hell is this? So now it's like, oh, well, we can all relate to the milquetoast John Myers character that's gonna show up. Yeah.
He takes a giant platform elevator down to level 51, enters this massive library. There's a fireplace. A voice says, "Turn the page, please." John walks up to a tank, and it's Fishman, a giant fish tank, sort of like a sweeter creature from the Black Lagoon.
Right. And we enter this facility. We go down. He lowers down in this logo, this very cool logo that was created by Mignola and is all over the comics. There was a mug, Shawn, with this logo on it, and I can't find it anymore. So I might have to make my own. But we enter section 51. So clearly a nod to Area 51 as we're about to go on our journey. And fortunately, unfortunately or not, I have to bring it up, but John Myers is on his hero's journey.
Oof.
Because he's being thrust into the beginning of the hero's journey. You get thrust out into this world and you meet these characters. So we're about to pull him into his, Star Wars cantina scene where we're going to enter this area and we're going to meet all these characters and he's going to be thrown off by it. When we enter this room, Shawn, what was it? The Shadow Gallery that we loved so much in V for Vendetta?
Yes.
If this was my bedroom or my living room or my whatever, what an incredible space. There's just bookshelves as far. You can get rid of the fish guy in the tank if you want. That's fine. But everything else, the sculptures, the whatever, there's a giant statue of the Archangel Saint Michael slaying a demon that's there in the center. And we've got books and little gnarly things. Like, I could just let me hang out in this room, give me a cup of coffee, a whole pot, and let me just stay in there and hang out. You would have to pull me out of the BPRD area, this area of the BPRD, like kicking and screaming.
It is a beautiful spot. Fireplace, I think, is everything is in there.
It's incredible and just chock full of like so many goodies, except for the rotten eggs.
Fishman is reading a book outside of his tank. He reads 4 books at once every single day, says the voice behind him. It's Old Man Broomy. Fishman knows everything there is to know about this John Myers of the FBI, which leaves him in shock. Old Broomy says this man's name is Abraham Sapien, discovered in a secret chamber in St. Trinian's Foundling Hospital in Washington. His name is taken from the inscription on the side of his tank, Ichio Sapiens, April 14th, 1865, the day Lincoln died. Hence, Abe Sapien. They feed this fishman rotten eggs. He loves them. He has a unique frontal lobe, which makes him super smart. John asks where he is. Broom says in the lobby there was a transcription. In the absence of light, darkness prevails. I feel like this is a quote Vertebrae recently brought up in like our Ninja Turtles episode or something.
Yeah, there was a takeoff of it in Star Wars. Yeah.
Broom says there are things that go bump in the night, Agent Myers. We are the ones who bump back. Cool line. Cool delivery. I dig that.
Yeah.
They take an elevator. Broom says 1937, Hitler joins the Thule Society, a group of German aristocrats obsessed with the occult. 1938, they acquire the Spear of Longinus, which pierced Christ. He who holds it becomes invincible. 1943, President Roosevelt fights back. Bureau of Paranormal Research and Defense is born. 1958, occult wars end with the death of Hitler. And John says, 1945, you mean? Hitler died in 45. And Old Man Broomy laughs and says, did he now?
Yeah, so let's back up for a second. This Thule Society is a real thing. A German occult group, formed shortly after World War I. named after a mythical northern country in Greek legend. And, the spear they're talking about is this spear of Longinus, but it sounds like you're saying something else when you say it,
I don't know
which
how
is
to.
the
I didn't know.
spear, which is the spear of destiny, uh, which they also roll into the new DuckTales series. Have you ever seen the new DuckTales? They kind of roll in something similar to this in there, but we get a lot of this. This feels very Indiana Jones right here. So it's a legendary Christian relic, and it's believed that this is the spear that pierced the side of Christ. And the legend on this is that whoever has this and understands its significance holds the destiny of the world in their hands. So Hitler does get this. He leads troops into Austria and he grabs this spear of destiny at the Hofburg Museum. And then it's found buried beneath the Nuremberg fortress where Hitler commits suicide later on. So this is something he really went after. And we could do multiple podcasts on Nazis and the occult for sure. I think there's a whole series probably on the History Channel on it. So I'm not going to sit here and go through all of it. But I'm just going to say that for our purposes, Mignola, GDT, just weave this into this elaborate tapestry that gives this movie this incredible base to work from. That foundation of some reality, some embellishment of reality, and very cool.
It's a good mixture. He leaves John with Agent Clay, who will make all the introductions. Broom gives John a handful of baby Ruths. Lucky bastard. I want a baby Ruth. Broom tells John he handpicked him from a roster of more than 70 Academy graduates. He says, "Make me proud." Agent Clay says to John, "They're not speaking. Professor Broom had him grounded." John wants to know, had who grounded? Clay opens up an enormous vault door and says, "Come meet the rest of the family."
And you know what's cool too, Shawn? When we meet Clay, what's the first thing you think when you meet Clay, when you see him?
Like typical agent dude. He's like one like
Yeah.
Johnson and Johnson from
Yeah, except for the hair plugs.
yeah.
Like right away when you see it, you're like, wait, that's weird. And then we're going to get a discussion about it. And I love that we've fleshed out some of these characters very quickly. That's something that's just so cool. We love that in Carpenter films too, where we meet people in the Thing and they've got this, Windows has, he has this whole backstory that you want to hear about already. And we do it with this agent right here. Like that didn't need to be in there, right? That's got to be a GDT thing. Throw it in there and make it kind of funny. But in the beginning, it's like obvious and you almost think it's like a mistake. You know what I mean? Like just a bad wig for the film. I thought that was funny.
He gets fed 6 times a day. He likes cats. You're his nanny, his keeper, his best friend. He's never to go out unsupervised. John asks who. Clay hands him a comic book. Hellboy. We hear him say, "I hate those books. They never get the eyes right."
Yeah, and so this Hellboy comic is a fake comic made to look like a Silver Age book in the kind of the Marvel style. So it was created by Mignola just for the film. I'll also say Shawn eats 6 times a day and loves cats. Do
You're
we
looking
know
at
another
him.
do we know another character besides that we
Me.
all know and love besides Shawn? An
Me.
additional character? Alf.
Alf.
Alf loves to eat cats, but he loves cats and he eats constantly throughout the series. So Hellboy, this eating 6 times a day, this is not something that shows up in the comics. The cat thing, if it does, it's not anything that's like super important. I think he does. Somebody's going to write in and tell me, how do I not remember this? But I read so much stuff that I haven't. I wanted to, Shawn, for this podcast, do a complete reread of all Hellboy stories, even though they're only based on the initial Seas of Destruction. And then, you realize how absolutely insane that would be. But I have here on camera for YouTube.
We'll post this on the In Madness socials.
We'll post it on the In Madness socials, but I have volume 1.
Sick.
And this is a cloth bound, for all you book nerds out there, cloth bound library edition book. I don't know that you can buy these original anymore. I think you have to get them on the secondary market, but when this is done, listeners, I'm going to force Shawn. I have other versions of these, like regular graphic novel versions. I'm giving them to Shawn and I'm forcing him to read them.
I love how excited Vertebrae is about this. There's a full-grown Hellboy. He's smoking a cigar. He's lifting weights. He's got a bunch of TV screens with a dark-haired woman's picture on it. Clay says Hellboy is 60 years old, but he doesn't age like we do. It's like reverse dog years. He's barely out of his 20s. Hellboy makes fun of Clay and his hair implants. He tells him Agent Myers is his new liaison. Hellboy's pissed. John offers some candy. Hellboy asks if his father is back. Clay says yes. Hellboy wants to know if he's still mad, and Clay's like, well, you did break out. Hellboy says he wanted to see her, the woman on all of the TV screens. He says it's nobody's business. Clay says it is because you go out and get yourself on TV all over again. Myers is dumbfounded by everything going on. Clay tells him, no, do not stare. Hellboy hates to be stared at. Clay tells John Hellboy files down his horns to fit in, where he should have these horns. He's got these two nubs sticking out of his forehead.
And I think there's more of a connection to those horns being, because we see it in the comics later on, of like when they're fully manifested, there's like a change kind of in him as a person too. But I think it's a fun line that he does this to just like kind of fit in. This is, for me, this is one of those moments when we see him on film. Ron Perlman as Hellboy is quintessentially Hellboy, right? He already has that face that's very similar to the way it's drawn in the comics, and you can't separate the two. All of us Hellboy fans are still disappointed that we didn't get a third film, because I think we could have rounded out this trilogy with them. And I think they've just been chasing it ever since. But like, this is everybody's, when you see Ron Perlman as Hellboy, this is everybody's Hellboy. And it rolls in a lot of, right? It's just his voice and how he already talks, and the smoking of the cigars, just like the comic. And yeah, this was a relief to a lot of people, because they used to do these things in Wizard Magazine where they would be like, oh, who could play these characters in film? And before this film came out, people would often talk about if they made a Hellboy movie, like it should be Ron Perlman, who previously was like Beauty and the Beast, right? He was in the Beauty and the Beast series. He was Beast. But fantastic.
They don't want him to stare, but immediately John Myers is staring at Hellboy's horns. Alarm goes off. Code red. Hellboy says they're playing our song. It's time to go fight some monsters. An alarm has been triggered at the Mackin Library. Cops aren't saying shit. There's SWAT, medics, everyone present at the scene of the crime. Large garbage truck pulls up. Hellboy is in the back. The truck has double-sided mirrors, so no one can see in, but Hellboy can see out. It's him and Fishman inside this tank. He's out of his tank now. Hellboy's thinking about his lady. Fishman says, Liz left us, Red. Take the hint. Hellboy unpacks his enormous gun and says, we don't take hints.
Yeah, and this is cool. So our second film in a row where we get a garbage truck, Shawn. We had it in
I did think Ninja Turtles immediately.
Yeah, and this is a cool, like, inside here in the truck, we'll see there's like roosters in there, and there's all this like stuff that looks like chemicals and beakers and equipment. And Abe has to put this collar around his neck that has liquid in it so that he can continue to breathe outside of the water, which is really, really neat device. And this is, we just keep getting deeper and deeper into this like really cool world.
They're playing Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, Red Right Hand. Probably because of Hellboy's big red right hand. This song is also featured in the movie Scream and is a great song, and I will add it right now to the In Madness Spotify playlist. They unload Hellboy and Fishman in the back of this library. They sync their locators and head inside. Agents are giving them the rundown. Large entity, type 5, reported, very aggressive. Hellboy says they already checked this place. There's a bunch of fakes and reproductions, and Professor Broom appears and says not everything was fake. Hellboy stops in his track. He hides a cigar behind his back and goes, Father. They open up this mini traveling arsenal full of Hellboy ammo. Broom says the entity is still in there. Surveillance shows a 16th century statue was destroyed, a statue that wards off demons. The statue was a hollow prison. The Vatican deemed the occupants dangerous enough to include it in the list of Avenon.
Nice. And this statue was a hollow Saint Dionysus statue, and Greek Orthodox Church actually celebrates the feast day of Saint Dionysus, which is October 3rd. So log that in, Shawn, and you and I will have a feast together
We shall.
on October. Maybe that's by the time we actually get to Mission Sandwich and together is October 3rd.
I'm going the second we wrap this episode. You see, they put my picture on the menu. Not only is my name on the menu, now my picture is on the menu at Mission Sandwich. So bad.
I know. I saw that. You're
Sick.
like a
with
full...
James Hetfield and Taylor Swift. I am amongst music gods.
So if you go to Mission Sandwich in Brooklyn and you go there, Shawn's there. He's going to be hanging out, and he'll just be pointing at his picture while he eats his sandwich.
Yeah.
We should get that picture on a shirt, and you could wear the picture of yourself on the shirt while standing by or the picture of the sandwich. We should get the sandwich on a shirt. That would be amazing.
I have many, many pictures of the inside of my sandwich.
That's awesome.
And you can go to the In Madness socials.
You can go to Mission Sandwich in Brooklyn. Maybe you'll run into Shawn pointing at his photo. Maybe you can pick up a shirt that I co-branded with Mission Sandwich. We got 2 different shirts and a knit hat as well that you could buy, and we'll show that. We've showed that stuff online already, but we've got a cool little moment with that. And then you should go back and check our episode with Chef Brian, The Menu, which, just an aside, Shawn, The Menu was on last night on TV, like on FX, and you could watch it on HBO without commercials. And as soon as I just happened to flip to it, then I was locked in.
Done.
I couldn't turn away. And it was even like commercials and stuff. But now I'm just watching it because it's like that movie is so good. And I love that Chef Brian brought us into it, and go back and listen to that episode, explain things to us. But yeah, to bring it all the way back around, go to Mission Sandwich, hang out with Shawn, take your picture with Shawn and your sandwich. We'll post it on the socials.
Yeah.
It's
or just
awesome.
take a picture of your sandwich.
Are you going to go and bring me back a sandwich? Is that what's
happening?
I'm
bringing back sandwiches for everybody, apparently. So we'll see.
Oh, my God. Maybe we should FaceTime.
Yeah, no, you have to get your ass there.
Oh,
you're not
come
getting
on,
out of
help
this.
me
You're
out.
coming to Brooklyn with me one day.
Let's do this pandemic style. We'll just FaceTime.
Fishman takes his hand and puts it on the door to listen to the other side. Hellboy says, "Perfect job for these babies," and shows John Myers his custom bullets he made of holy water, clove, lead, silver, shavings, white oak, the works.
Nice.
Fishman says the entity is ancient, evil, and hungry, and Hellboy goes in to say hi. There's goo everywhere. Hellboy tells Fishman to open up the book because he's going to need more info on this thing. Hellboy goes in alone because he likes being the lonely hero. An enormous amount of slime dumps in front of Hellboy, who looks up and yells out, "Hey, Stinky!" There's this big, gross, slimy monster hanging from the ceiling, eating one of the guards. Hellboy tells the monster to probably take one hell of a dump after having a meal like that.
Yeah, he says something about needing, like, that he ate the boots and clothes, and he'll need a lot of fiber or something to
help move that through. Fishman says that Samael, the desolate one, son of Nurgle, brother of... Inside, the monster drops the guard, comes down from the ceiling, and it takes this big... It's this like big, nasty, like anteater looking creature with a bunch of eyes and fangs and snakes for hair.
Yeah, very cool. And in Judaism, Shawn, Samael is the archangel of death, a destroyer and ruler of the fifth heaven, and he's served by 2 million angels underneath him. So his role in Jewish lore is the main angel of death, the head of Satan's. I don't know what that means. I have to look that up. Are there multiple Satans, perhaps? He condemns man's sins, but he's still one of God's servants. He's frequently in the story of the Garden of Eden, and he helped engineer the fall of Adam and Eve with the snake in the writings from the Second Temple period. So we get more of this rolled in.
Manifestation of evil. Hellboy says, "I'm not a good shot, but this gun's got really big bullets," and points it right at the thing. Hellboy wants to keep it peaceful, but the fight is on, and he goes, "Oh, crap." But he shoots it, and he walks away.
Yeah, and that's the gun is the Samaritan, which he picks up in comic lore in the 50s. he picks this up, and it's a metal gun forged with a combination of Irish church bells, cold iron from crucifixes, blessed silver, and other mystic metals.
Yeah, I like the cool custom bullets he makes. They're pretty gnarly,
Mm-hmm.
like big like chemical vials full of stuff that he like concocts for each enemy is pretty
Yeah, and I
gnarly.
love it. Like silver shavings, it's presumably for like a werewolf, and garlic for like a vampire, right? There's white oak. I bet you the white oak is a nod to some other folklore. Very cool.
Fishman says, "You need to hear the rest of this." Hellboy thinks the job is done. Fishman says, "Samael is the Lord of the Shadows, son of Nurgle, Hound of Resurrection." That one
Oops.
stops Hellboy in his tracks. He turns around and the creature is gone. Hellboy wants to know how to kill it, but Fishman doesn't know. Right then, it pops up and slaps Hellboy across the room. It whoops Hellboy's ass, throws him out a window. He lands outside in a dumpster in an alley, and we see the silhouette of Grigori, who says, "All grown up, I see."
Mm-hmm.
Hellboy knows the voice. "It's the first lullaby you ever heard, my son. I brought you into this world. I know your true purpose and your true name." Hellboy picks up his monster gun to shoot him, but he vanishes. And behind him drops the monster. Hellboy goes to shoot it, but an enormous tongue snake thing comes out and grabs Hellboy's hand. But out
Mm-hmm.
comes John Myers to save Hellboy, shooting at the monster, stopping it.
Yeah, and Shawn, the lore of Hellboy's birth and stuff obviously different for the movie, but certainly it gives a sense that Rasputin's like I'm your dad because I opened up this portal and then you manifested, like you were created and dumped into the world like that, rather than in the comics that he already exists as a child and is thrust into this world. So I think we're supposed to believe in the movie, right? That whatever, just by opening the portal, this character, was created and then came through.
I kind of felt like it had already existed somewhere else and got, like, unfortunately trapped and sent to us.
Yeah, so you think there was like an empty, like an empty crib, like in some demon people's house, and they just they go upstairs to check on the baby, and the baby's just gone.
Where's Roy?
Roy. Oh, I love it. That's his name. That's his name
Just
in his world
regular
is
ass
Roy.
Roy. Yeah, that's not his
That's
name.
fantastic. Regular ass Roy. Roy Rogers, one of my favorite places, by the way. You like Roy Rogers?
I messed with Roy Rogers back in the
They're
day.
not
They
around
still exist?
anymore,
Yeah,
but
I don't know
I
if they
don't
still
know.
exist.
But there was one of the only places that had the mustard on the pump, the Roy Rogers mustard, big steak fries, and I'm so you can tell I'm hungry as
Yeah,
we
I'm getting
record this
really
episode.
hungry. Hellboy, Hellboy gets pissed because he wants to handle this alone. He also got this gnarly alien snake creature thing attached to his arm that he rips off and he throws it to Agent John Myers.
Mm-hmm.
Hellboy fires a tracking bullet into the monster, which runs away, so Hellboy chases after it. The creature's dripping this bright green sort of predator blood, and it also kind of sort of looks like Predator.
Mm-hmm.
Now Hellboy and the creature are running through a heavily populated area. John is chasing after, but gets dinged by a car, and he's on the floor injured, about to get ran over. Hellboy saves his ass and yells, "Red means stop," and hits the hood of a car, flipping it into the air.
Yeah, so we're this part, this is movie magic fun, I guess, because the beginning of it, we get who is this guy, and we kind of have some sightings, and now it's Halloween, so maybe you're like, oh,
Nice
that's somebody,
costume.
right? That's somebody in a mask, but like we just full on get them everywhere. There's just no, I mean, this is not an age of everyone having iPhones, I guess, so people aren't filming it. But then,
This is
and then
like
the poor,
right there on the cusp.
yeah, and then the poor person driving the car. It just does. I mean, I can't help but think they got a 2004 vehicle at that time. I don't know what kind of airbags they have. Like they're not in good shape after he punches that car. That is very sort of, this is where the movie ends up being more of the comic booky movie vibe than the actual Hellboy comic. So this is where somebody like you is going to watch this and be like, oh, this is very superhero-y, right? These parts. And we're running around and, Superman just puts glasses on and nobody knows what he looks like. Whereas the comic is very much more wrapped in the folklore and in the darkness, and the BPRD does exist in the world, but they're definitely way more subtle than this guy punching a car, having a flip in the air, land in the middle of the road. One, that's happening. Two, this is a city street, and people are driving like 100 miles an hour on this city street, which is, I feel, is a little bit ridiculous. But there are hundreds, thousands of people, hundreds of people around when this happens. So there's no way that everybody just doesn't know that Hellboy exists and that this creature just ran through here, dripping all this green ooze everywhere. Maybe this is, this is in a post Ghostbusters / Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle world.
I was going to ask if you think that this is when he's like, there are things that go bump in the night and we bump back. I'm like, do you think he meant Ghostbusters?
Yeah, maybe. And maybe, Hellboy has run across the turtles. There's a lot of hanging out in the, subways and sewers in this too.
Hellboy follows the green blood trail into the subway. The monster runs right through the subway car, also kind of like in Predator 2, and jumps out of the back. Meanwhile, Hellboy, who's trying to chase after, jumps and misses and is stuck holding on to the train, getting rammed in the face by a cop with a fire extinguisher who has no idea who Hellboy is. Hellboy tells him he's on his side, but the cop doesn't believe him and knocks him in the face again, making Hellboy fall off the train, and he keeps getting his head and horn nubs knocked by the train as it's passing overhead. He gets up and his nubs are flaming hot. He touches one and scalds his hands. He goes, ow.
Yeah, the goofiness of his comments and stuff, that directly from the comics. That's he'll make comments like that throughout it, and I think it's just got to lighten up the mood because the comics are so dark that if you just don't have him being a wisecracking, cigar smoking, crusty dude, it's not fun then, right? It's just only like me reading it for all these weird facts.
The monster is right above him, and the two battle it out till Hellboy grabs the third rail, sending a shock through his body into the monster, setting it on fire. Hellboy says he is fireproof and the monster is not, and he lights his cigar with his flaming hand.
And this movie is a mix of CG and of stuff that they made as well, like practical effects. And I think for 2025, some of the CG doesn't hold up as strong. And I think this is one of the scenes where it doesn't, where I think they probably still could have done that with practical effects. But this is at a time period where you can save a lot of money if you do it in CG.
He calls Myers over the walkie-talkie. Myers wants to know where Hellboy is. He says he just fried Stinky. He'll be home late, so Dad shouldn't wait up. Hellboy turns off his tracker and walks the subway. Behind him, the monster turns into ash. Hellboy uses his devil tail to steal some kid's 6-pack of beer and heads to Bellamy Psychiatric Hospital. Inside, we see Liz, the woman from all of Hellboy's TV screens. She heads outside and finds Hellboy, who shows her his beer. She comments on his tattered, electrocuted arm, and he tells her he wanted to see her.
Yeah, when we see Samael, right, we get the cool little green light fire that comes out and breaks into two. So Hound of Resurrection, we're going to quickly find out in the story that this thing can reproduce quickly, very fast.
Back at the site of the battle, we see a pissed off Thomas Manning arguing with Professor Broom, saying every time the media sees Hellboy, they run to him, and he is running out of lies. Manning's like, how many times did he escape this year? 5? Broom says Hellboy is not, he's a guest, not a prisoner. And Manning is like, that is incorrect. He is a prisoner as long as he's funded by the government. Broom says he knows where to find him and he'll get him back. Manning yells at Fishman. He calls him Fish Stick. Tells him not to touch anything. Fish Dude says he needs to touch it to see the past and the future. He says, don't worry about fingerprints. I don't have any. He tells Professor Broom they were here. And Manning is like, he's already pissed. He's like, who? Nixon? Houdini? Hoffa? Broom says, show me, Abe. Show me what happened.
It was funny. The Manning character, I would think like, this is a regular job for him. So like, does he punch in and punch out and then just go home to like his family? Like, does he commute to work? Like, they're just, right. He's mentioning all these characters because he's just wrapped up in all this crazy occult and paranormal stuff. That's just actual reality.
And just making up lies to cover it all up.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. These guys, this has got to be almost their entire lives, I would think. Probably be pretty hard to have a regular home life with this as a career.
I would imagine so. And this, my friend, I feel like is the perfect halfway point for us to take a break from Hellboy episode 40, part 1. We will find out everything that happens in the past, present, and future for part 2. I feel good about this. I love that Vertebrae has just been glistening for 90 minutes about the movie that he picked and left up to the In Madness family to participate, to also like hammer down that Hellboy would be the next movie we will be doing. I'm enjoying this. I'm enjoying learning about all this stuff because every time I wrote down something that I did not know what it was, I'm like, oh, Vertebrae's going to have the answer to this 100%.
It's hard to get through this movie because they name drop all of this stuff in the beginning, and it's like, wait. So having watched this movie a ton of times, I probably did look some of it up before because I'm always curious with it. But when we got to do it through our In Madness brain, and obviously if you've listened to episodes in the past, Shawn and I share a brain. So the In Madness math tells you that we share half a brain.
100% of half of a brain.
We use 100% of 50% of a brain to get through these episodes, and we do our best. But I'm going to ask the In Madness audience to write in if you've got questions, if you've got comments. There is so much. We could do episode upon episode on Hellboy, on this folklore, on Nazis and the occult. But if you've got any interesting facts, any gnarly bits that you want to send in to us, please do. And we will read them or play your voicemail on the show. If you feel that you can put a voicemail together as well as our buddy David, go for it. That bar is high on it, but there's got to be people out there that love this movie or listening right now.
They voted for it.
Yeah, and I would love to hear it and hear that passion come through. I think in part 2, we're going to get into what made Shawn walk out of the theater, or when did he walk out of the theater, and did he take his snacks with him? I've got a lot of questions about this walking out, but we'll get to it in part 2. And just thank you, Shawn, for letting me blab on and do all of this research. I've still got a ton more research to do on part 2, but it's it's very front loaded with these characters that are mentioning, but we're fully submerged into this world with Hellboy. And what'd you call Abe? You were calling him Fishface? Fishman. Or Fish Stick, you could call him. Gas Mask. I love it. Thank you for taking this ride with me.
I want to know, so did you have a milking of the alpacas moment? Because I had trouble pinpointing mine.
I don't know. What's funny is I realized that on these episodes, you mostly do it. It's become Shawn's segment. But I don't even think about it anymore.
I figure if you usually agree with my choice, but I figure
I think that was a different choice.
You would be like, this is my, because you have before when you've been like, this was actually my milking of the alpaca.
Yeah, I think the Rasputin one is good. I think as a geeky fanboy, seeing Ron Perlman for the first time is probably a big one. It's not definitely a story-driven moment, but it's a like, holy crap, they did it.
It's like David when he first saw Leonardo jump out in the original Ninja Turtles movie.
Yeah, and I do have a Hellboy toy as well, which we can post.
We will post it. You got to send me a lot of pictures, my friend. I will send you a list of all the pictures you have promised to post on the socials. But I want to know what everybody else's milking of the alpacas moment was. And I also want you to send us your pictures of Hellboy stuff or comment on this episode that we have done so far, or any of our previous episodes on the socials at InMadnessPod, InMadnessPod@gmail.com. We are on YouTube, so you can see all the cool stuff Vertebrae holds up to the camera to show you, which we will also post on the socials. Make sure you like and subscribe and comment. Give us the 5-star reviews. Check out the In Madness Spotify playlist, which we are adding Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, Fucking Slayer, and High on Fire to. After this episode, we air songs after every single episode. We add a new track to the In Madness Spotify playlist. Tell everybody you know about this show, and if you want to get yourself an In Madness t-shirt, go to inmadness.com. Vertebrae, you got all your bits in for this episode, part 1?
I think so.
We will return next week. I'm looking very much forward to the thrilling conclusion of Hellboy next week on In Madness Pod.